Marching, baby! Here we go. I gotta get with this team. Come on now.
Coach, I don't think we win the celebration. Ohio State. And you did it anyway.
Inside the booth, here's some immediate reaction as the Oregon Ducks go on the road, get the biggest win in the Pac-12 conference since probably Oregon beat Florida State in the Rose Bowl in the playoff, in the inaugural playoff. What a monumental win, not only for the program, the Oregon Ducks, but for that conference, the Pac-12. And that's where I'll start. They have needed a win like this, like they have needed air to breathe in the last few years. This has been a conference that everybody has just passed off and passed over in recognition for national awards and for playoff conversations. And yet now, really the three biggest wins in the college football year are Georgia taking down Clemson in a top 5 showdown, kind of a coin flip game. They win that one. And then you've got UCLA taking down LSU, and then this one. And this one takes the cake. This is the biggest result that we've seen so far in college football, hands down. Oregon on the road, 2-touchdown dogs, and they take down Ohio State. Ohio State, we'll get to them in just a moment, but let's first sit with the Oregon Ducks. That is a real football team. They've got speed. They've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a really good offensive line that was able to run the football and provide holes for their veteran running backs. They've got good wide receivers, and they were not out of place in this game. It's not very often that the Ohio State Buckeyes have to line up and they've got to face people that look like themselves. And they weren't quite ready for that today. And you could see it right off the jump. That defense for Oregon was missing their stars. Kayvon Thibodeau, street clothes. Justin Flo, street clothes. Drew Mathis, the linebacker, not here. He's not available. They had guys go down during the game, and yet they continued to put in guys that they have recruited at a high level that could run and tackle in space. A couple of things that I thought that the Oregon defense did such a great job of. Now, granted, Ohio State had over 600 yards of offense. But this is an offense that's one of the most potent in all of college football, and they only put up 28 points. Well, how did that happen? They got a couple of great stops when they needed them in scoring position. One was on a 4th down. Okay, so those are timely stops, and that's what you need to have happen. Another thing that they did is they tackled well in space. You didn't see the large explosion plays and yards after the catch from wide receivers for the most part. So everything Ohio State had to get, they had to earn, whether it was through the air or on the ground. And that made it difficult on them, and ultimately it paid off for Oregon. And then the last thing is they made the big play when they needed to and got the turnover late as Stroud ended up overthrowing Olave and threw that interception to Verone McKinley. So an unbelievable job by the defense. Tim DeRuyter, the defensive coordinator, what an amazing game plan. The ability to get those guys to believe that they could go out there and stop that high-powered Buckeye offense. And then kudos to the secondary. Those secondary players were terrific, and it should not be looked over that DJ James was back. And they got some guys back in the secondary. Mikael Wright played really well at corner. So unbelievable performance. And then on the offensive side, that's where the experience was, the game plan was, and they just took advantage of some looks for Ohio State that Ohio State didn't adjust soon enough. And they finally took advantage. They ran the same play for a couple of scores, a third down conversion, big plays when they needed to. And because C.J. Verdell is so good, he could just get to the edge and win in that short side. So Ohio State, let's start with Ohio State and the defensive side of the ball. They did not make adjustments quick enough. They were running man coverage, and that's their DNA. That's their blueprint. That's what they do. Having said that, when that's being exploited by the opposing offense, you got to change course. And they didn't do that. And then they didn't play some fundamentals of defense very well. They kept having a crackback block against the linebacker, and then the corner wouldn't spill out over the top. A lot of technical stuff to say that the Oregon Ducks just got the edge. In defensive terms, you call it setting the edge. Someone has to set the edge. Play with their outside arm free. If they're on the right side, outside arm. If they're on the left side, outside arm on the left side. They didn't do that. And Oregon got some big plays because of it. Got to credit Anthony Brown. He hung in there and did a marvelous job. And one of the reasons why he played so well, in particular throwing the football, is that Ohio State couldn't get any pressure on him. So that was the other part, is they didn't adjust in coverage quick enough, and then they didn't go to a pressure package that was able to disrupt the timing of the offense for the Oregon Ducks. All of that led to a couple of touchdown deficit in the fourth quarter. And at that point, you're just trying to hang on. It felt like attrition would get the best of them, but they rose up late and got a couple of huge defensive stops, which was phenomenal. Phenomenal game. This is what makes college football so great. I know Buckeye fans are disappointed, and to Buckeye fans, you should be disappointed. You're a talented team, but you faced a team that was equally talented. And unfortunately, they just executed better. In particular, Oregon's offense over Ohio State's defense. The lack of adjustments really hurt, and then the poor execution in the man coverage, in particular setting the edge of the defense, absolutely crushed them. Again, huge win for the Pac-12. Biggest winner of the day by far. Don't care what happens the rest of the day. This today will be, at least in terms of the results on the field, it will be about Oregon taking down Ohio State and the emergence of the Pac-12 this year. And now the Pac-12 has two real contenders. I think UCLA should be ranked higher. This will certainly vault Oregon into the top 10, maybe close to the top 5. Probably should, in particular with the way that they played with their stars out. And it sets the Pac-12 up for a collision course maybe between those two. Potentially Utah can get into that conversation. We'll still have to see what USC is with their quarterback Keaton Slovis. But now this is a conference, even with the poor performance of the North last week, losing to Montana and Utah State and Nevada, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what you do in the middle of your conference. It matters what you do at the top. And the top of the Pac-12 has come to play this year. 2021 looks like a year that we could potentially see a Pac-12 team in the college football playoff. Can't wait to see the rest of the season, how it plays out. But for today, huge win. Oregon Ducks, congratulations. You deserve it. Mario Cristobal had their team ready to go, and they win this one here from Columbus. That'll do it for In the Booth. I'm Joel Klatt. We'll see you next week.
All right, you like upsets, do you? How about this one? The Shoe hosting the first full-capacity crowd since the 2019 season. Kayvon Thibodeau, inactive for Oregon, didn't matter. Taking on number 3 Ohio State, which is kind of an upset for today. Third quarter, Oregon up 14-7. 3rd and 3 inside their own 25, and C.J. Verdell gets the handoff. Multiple defenders going to miss, and he takes it 77 yards. He's 5'8", 211 pounds. Struggled with injuries the last 2 seasons. Not today. 161 yards, 20 carries, and 3 touchdowns. Oregon was up 21-7. C.J. Stroud, the perfect pass to Chris Olave down the sideline this game. There were parts of it where you thought Ohio State's offense is not the problem. A little bit more of a defensive issue. Ohio State picked up 41 on that one. And then later in the drive, going for it on 4th and 6 inside the Oregon 15. This time, it's Stroud to Jackson Smith and Jigba. That is a score. And it's a close game, 35-28. There's a Buckeye defensive stop. Ohio State with the chance, and Stroud this time makes a mistake. The pass is picked. Ohio State never led in this game. They were favored by 14.5, and guess what? They lost by 7. Ryan Day says, yeah, obviously the loss hurts. 35-28 the final, but it's, quote, not fatal. It is the first ever win for Oregon, against Ohio State. And that is just the
This
beginning.
is why you came to Ohio State to play in big games like this.
The third touchdown for C.J. Verdell. Stroud delivers. Intercepted. Oregon shocking the nation.
That's how we do it.
Paul Feinbaum with us this morning on SportsCenter AM. We heard Ryan Day, Paul, in that little snippet of sound saying this is why you came to Ohio State, is to play in games like this. You came to Ohio State to win games like this, and now the Buckeyes join Clemson as preseason top fives that already have losses on the resume. Here we are mid-September. Which of those two big programs, brand name blue chip programs, should be more concerned right now?
It's Ryan Day's program. It's hard to explain what happened yesterday at the Horseshoe, especially when you consider that Oregon coming into the game without its two best players, maybe the best player in college football, and they just did everything right. Mario Cristobal is an ascending coach. People are really looking at him for big-time things. The key to the game is really Joe Moorhead, his offensive coordinator, who was at Mississippi State a couple of years ago. But Ohio State's defense couldn't stop anything. Their offense couldn't get anything going. And in the end, their path to the playoff is very complicated because of that. That's a home loss where Clemson lost a neutral site game and only really gave up 3 points because one of the scores was on a pick six.
Pac-12, the lone bright spot in a day full of surprises and really upsets throughout college football. Once again, the Pac-12 on the wrong side of a couple of them.
Trouble in the Big Ten?
Yes, you have to think they are, and it's on the defensive side of the ball, Jay Will. And I've heard a lot of people talking about change already. I think when you talk about coordinators, it's a little bit early, but you just think about what happened in the national championship game. You think about what happened Saturday, and it's really maybe it's been coming, but that was really as bad as Southern Cal was losing to Stanford. I think some of us our jaw dropped even more in terms of what happened in Columbus. As bad as it looked, I will give Ryan Day credit. I think he's been spectacular as a head coach for two years and 2 games. But he has to figure out a way to solve this right now, and he probably can do it because he's not going to see a team like Oregon or an offense like that. And as you guys probably pointed out, that was not Oregon's best. I mean, they were missing not only
Thibodeau,
their best player, but maybe the best player in college football, in Thibodeau. So let's look at that and think how much worse it could have been. They also were missing a key defensive player. But they just have they have stagnated a little bit. But the good news for them is they're not facing juggernauts the rest of the way. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with Iowa. That's a Big Ten championship game. Penn State looks good, but it's early. I'm not ruling them completely out, but they are way back right now.
Let us move on to the big one at the shoe. Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon had never beaten Ohio State 9 tries. Could they get it done today? No Kayvon Thibodeau. A lock in this one. America loved Ohio State minus the 14.5. C.J. Verdell had other plans.
This drive started on their 1-yard line. They go 10 plays, 99 yards, and it was a big day for C.J. Verdell.
First time they've had a 99-yard drive against an FBS opponent since 2016. But here comes C.J. Stroud and Garrett Wilson to tie it up. Joey, what happened here?
You wonder why this touchdown looks so easy? Look at the Oregon defenders. They're waiting on the call from the sideline, from their coaches. They have to look at their wristband to find out what defense are we running. Well, they didn't run any at all.
You can effectively say that one's on the coaches. They got the call in late. Ohio State took advantage, ensuing Oregon possession. Verdell's second touchdown of the day. Oregon pumped. They take a 14-7 lead. They went for it on 4th and 1 inside the red zone, so that was big. Oregon now third quarter. Verdell, 77 yards.
What's up with the Buckeyes' run defense, guys? Last week against Minnesota, they gave up $163 to Mo Ibrahim. They gave up 161 to C.J. Verdell. They got to get it fixed.
21-7 lead at that point. Don't count out the Buckeyes. Going for it on 4th and 3 inside the red zone. Stroud finds Wilson for a first down.
And at this time, it has the feel if Ohio State can get to within 1 score in the 4th quarter, they got a chance to come back.
Get it to the 5-star Travion Henderson. Ohio State trims the lead 28-21. Next Oregon possession. Ducks inside the Buckeyes 15. Anthony Brown makes it 35-21.
The six-year senior had so much poise in this game. He was really good on 3rd and 4th down.
But here come the Buckeyes. Stroud, a perfect ball to Chris Olave down the sideline.
And that's a first-round wide receiver on the sideline. Great pass, great concentration, pulls in, and Ohio State not out of it yet.
Gave him a little pick-me-up, 41 yards in that play. Then Stroud finds Jackson Smith and Jigma again going forward on 4th down.
Yeah, and a nice play design here by Ryan Day. Some crossing patterns over the middle of the field. The safety gets picked, and that allows Smith and Jigba to be wide open.
Guys, a lot of these 4th down conversions were huge. Ohio State cuts it to a touchdown. 5 minutes remaining. Brown's pass incomplete to Spencer Webb. Here we go. Oregon forced a punt. That's the stop you needed. 3 minutes left. Stroud avoids the pressure, rolls out of the pocket, and he's picked off by Verone McKinley III.
And this is a 3rd and 18, 2 minutes left. You got to try to make a play. You just wish you throw this one out of bounds, give yourself a chance on 4th down to try to get it.
Mario Cristobal and the Ducks pull off the shocking upset. First time in Ohio State history that they've allowed at least 30 points in each of their first 2 games. Oregon just the 3rd Pac-12 team in the last 40 seasons to defeat a top 5 non-conference opponent on the road, and the first to do so since Stanford won at then top-ranked Notre Dame back in 1990. You think Mario Cristobal was excited?
We had 5 starters down on defense, and coming into this thing, you wondered, what's going to show up. So what showed up was practice, preparation, becoming game reality. That's how we do it.
What a moment. No Thibodeau, no star player. They were able to get it done. C.J. Stroud, you're going to look at the stats and say, hey, 484 yards. Yeah, it was in a losing effort. He came to play, but it wasn't enough. And Ryan Day, plain and simple, said they just weren't in this thing from the get-go.
Felt like it was a game that we were really never in control of. I felt like, they ran the ball. We didn't do a very good job of running the football. And because of that, I think they kind of controlled the game. We moved the ball at times, but didn't convert on 4th downs. And because of that, we were always kind of playing catch-up. And so we have to learn from this. We have to grow from this. We still have a lot of football left. And figure out, get on the film and figure out where, the execution issues were and get them fixed.
That was Ryan Day's first regular season loss in 24 tries, and a statement win for Oregon. And Jesse, you can't underestimate and talk about enough Anthony Brown, how big he was.
Really impressed with him. And he had a lot of pressure coming into this game, guys, playing on the road. No Kayvon Thibodeau. So his margin for error was really, really small. And he didn't throw the ball great last week against Fresno State. But you saw the 6-year senior transfer from Boston College, his experience and poise. He was really good with decision-making on 3rd and 4th down. There were a couple times in the second half. Ohio State scored a touchdown. The horseshoe was rocking. Anthony Brown led his team down calmly to score their own touchdown and take the momentum back. He's not worried about that stud true freshman Ty Thompson.
Right.
Everyone wants to see him play. He's not looking over his shoulder, worried about making mistakes. He's in command of this offense, and Oregon's got a massive game coming up against UCLA October 23rd. That could have big-time college football playoff implications, but Anthony Brown's giving him a chance.
He had to beat out Ty Thompson. He did so. It's his job now, but it always helps when you have a player like C.J. Verdell in the backfield.
Yeah, and we've all heard coaches give the coach speak. We got to go in there and be physical. We got to take care of the football. We can't make mistakes. That's how you. They literally did exactly that. They ran the ball with C.J. Verdell. He had 161, but they had, as a team, had 269. And you've seen at times he would get outside and there was no defender there, no one for the offensive line to pick up. They were physical. They had 4 penalties, and most important, they had no turnovers. You go on the road playing a top 5 team in the country without your best player. That's how you win the game. You don't turn it over. You don't make mistakes. And you run the football. And that's exactly what Coach Day was talking about. They ran the ball, and we couldn't. That's how you do it.
Big win for the Pac-12 in the process. Oregon got a win for the first time since 1997, being at least a 14-point underdog.
It started at high noon on the East Coast. It was Oregon taking down Ohio State 35-28. And if you're curious about what a renaissance season in college football looks like, because we've been labeling it that for several months now, this is what it looks like. Random, well, in your eyes maybe, random 14-point dogs just going into the shoe and taking down Ohio State. A team that played for a national championship last year, a team that was an overwhelming favorite in not only the Big Ten, but the college football playoff picture coming into this year. And there are a lot of ways that I've seen people look at this. You know, when you're on the road like I was yesterday, I was not at this game, you start to get some feedback before you can watch the game yourself. I got to see the second half of it live, but I was already getting feedback. And it's funny because I think the predisposition a lot of people in college football have is you get mad and you start blaming the higher-rated team for not living up to the rating that you've put on them. So in this case, it was a bunch of people telling me everything Ohio State was doing wrong. Let me be clear, because I've gone back and watched this game today. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not an Ohio State loss. This is an Oregon win, and an emphatic one, because there was never a point where they didn't have control of the game. You don't possess control of the game throughout most of the entirety of the game and have someone else hand it to you. That's not the way it works. If Ohio State was -4 turnovers like Iowa State was yesterday, you could talk to me about the Buckeyes handing the game over. You made mistakes. Yeah, you did. The other team lined up across from you has a lot to do with how much you make in the way of mistakes. I almost said much mistakes instead of many mistakes, and the grammar teachers from Harris County Carver Middle School would have come after me. This was a program-defining win for Oregon, to put a finer point on it. And here's why there was so much doubt. Point spread notwithstanding, when you find out there's no Kayvon Thibodeau, a guy that I thought was a game changer in this, and he was a game changer. Oregon would have been a lot better had they had him on the field. I thought it was a game changer in the sense that I thought Oregon stood a puncher's chance with him. I did not think Oregon could win this game without Kayvon Thibodeau. You also add on, or compound matters, by the fact that they didn't have Justin Flo either. These are big-time playmakers. Young, in Flo's case, but big-time playmakers. And so not only do you have that dynamic in place, but guys just stepped up. And there was never a time where Oregon was trying to claw themselves out of a hole. There never was a hole. They were never trailing. They actually held the lead. They were on the offensive. Ohio State, rather, was on the defensive the whole afternoon. CJ Verdell, what a game for him, the Oregon tailback. 20 carries, 161, 2 touchdowns, 8.1 yards per carry. And it wasn't like Anthony Brown was just bombing away. He had a good afternoon, but it wasn't an elite performance through the air for Anthony Brown at quarterback for Oregon by any stretch. It was just guys stepped up, and that's one of the hallmarks. When you want to know if a program's in ascension mode, and Oregon very much is right now, and I think that's obvious, one of the hallmarks is guys step up, and you're not totally dependent on any one player. Maybe the quarterback position's different, but outside of that, the big-time teams, the ones that are going to eventually be conference championship contenders, college football playoff contenders way down the road, we're not talking about that right now, they don't depend solely on one defensive player or even two defensive players. It is a next-man-up mentality. They don't blink when those guys go down, and if you watched them yesterday, they didn't blink. Not only did they step up, not only was it next man up, it's like they didn't even skip a beat. If you didn't know Kayvon Thibodeau existed or Justin Flo existed, you would have turned on the TV and said, "Yep, I guess this looks like Oregon, Pac-12 favorite. I mean, 14-point under. Yeah, this looks like Oregon." They were missing two huge playmakers, and it really didn't matter at the end of the day. So it was eye-opening for them to presumably be outmanned and really just dictate terms all afternoon. Here's the question, though, and it's I guess rhetorical, but it's kind of I don't know. It's a fun thing to watch. For us, especially at 24/7 in the coming days, weeks, months. I don't know what the answer to this is. And the question is, how much recruiting juice can be squeezed out of one win? Whatever the answer to that question is, Mario Cristobal is about to fill in the blank. Whatever 100% of the juice that can possibly be squeezed out of a win is, they're about to squeeze it. And this is not a poor man's recruiting effort by any stretch. Already, they were rattling off elite prospect after elite prospect. They were going all over the country to do it. But if you'll look at your screen right now, the guys have just teed up Oregon's schedule. So now they've gotten through a stretch, Fresno and then at Ohio State. Nobody picked them to be 2-0. Pretty much everyone picked them to be 1-1. Well, now they're 2-0. So if you can dodge Stony Brook, I give them a pretty good chance of that, although as yesterday taught us, nothing is certain. They're entering a stretch where their conference play is, I'm not going to take any opponent lightly, but it's not it's the Appalachians. It's not the Rockies. Let me just put it that way. You got Arizona, you go to Stanford, you got Cal, and then you head to UCLA. That game's on down the road a little ways. Well, here's what you get to do. First off, you get to heal some guys up this week, hopefully. But secondly, how much can they evolve their passing game? Because ultimately, I think there's still a notch or maybe two notches that they need to improve. Not if they're going to be able to pull off any given game, any given upset. If they're going to put together ultimately the kind of team they want to be, there is still a level that they need to up. I don't think that coaching staff got home. If they've already watched that film, I don't think they watched it and said, we've arrived, this is what we want to duplicate every week. The result is what they want to duplicate. But from an execution standpoint, from a functionality standpoint, I think Joe Moorhead understands, and Mario Cristobal understands, when they look at that, there's still more we should be getting out of this offense, and there's more that we can get out of this offense. How much can we ask Anthony Brown to do? Yesterday, you had a guy step up, and his name was not Anthony Brown, although he played a good game. CJ Verdell, among other guys, was who stepped up. So I spent a considerable amount of time reflecting on Oregon, because I think that's what this game was about. But there is a massive Ohio State angle here, and the angle for most of you is what's wrong with Ohio State? Well, they're not as good as you thought they were, I guess is the answer you're looking for. That's what's wrong with Ohio State. But in reality, what they are is they're a very good team that you thought would be an elite team. A lot of Buckeye fans thought this would be an elite team. I don't know what the future holds for them. They're not elite right now. Obviously, they get drugged by Alabama if they played them right now. They got kind of handled by Oregon yesterday. But that's not the point. It's not the way that I choose to look at the game of college football. There have been times, believe it or not, in the past where teams got not embarrassed, but beaten early in the season and went on to do some special things. But they've got very little pass rush right now. Linebacker play is very bad. The product isn't acceptable defensively. And it's a big test for Ryan Day. He's still a very young head coach. It's one of the first major tests for him because it's a staff test. He's got the wrong guys on his defensive staff. I think he knows it. I don't think he'll ever step to a podium and say that. But when you see some of the moves that they inevitably, I think, will make once this season ends, I think it'll become clear he understands. And I think most people watching now understand this is not something, if you're an Ohio State fan, that's any revelation. I think most people can watch. I thought our buddies over at College Football Nerds made a good point. They do a really good live stream, by the way. If you're interested in getting some deeper dive, data-driven stuff that's happening on Saturday nights, I would recommend their channel. Those are the guys who originally got me into the YouTube game. College Football Nerds is a really good channel. And I can't remember which one said it last night, but they said, it's telling when your defensive coordinator, who has been in the game since the early 80s, gets his first shot as coordinator all the way down the road in 2021, and it's on your watch. That shouldn't happen. It's one thing, if you got an up-and-comer and you give a hot-shot 31-year-old the opportunity or a 28-year-old, but, man, Kerry Coombs has been around the block 10 times. If he were cut out to be a coordinator, he would have been one long before now, and he would have been one at a very high level. And so I love the guy now, but there is a role that he has at Ohio State. It shouldn't be D.C. There were a lot of pure fundamental things yesterday. I don't know how many more people could have texted me and said, Ohio State can't set the edge. I mean, I think my mom at one point said, Ohio State can't set the edge. What? I didn't even know you. What are you talking about? Who taught you this? It was that obvious. It was bad. It was Oregon. It was a paint by numbers. At the end of the day, it wasn't Michelangelo. It was paint by numbers for Oregon offensively. So a couple of things, and then we'll move on here. Mario Cristobal, they got Stony Brook this week. But bigger picture, does he get his team back immediately? Because that's what college football is teaching us more and more. It looks like it's harder and harder to get your team back. Florida State, they didn't even win last week. They almost won. And Norvell could not get them back. And they got embarrassed. We're going to talk about it later. As a result, does Mario Cristobal get his team back? This is the biggest win they've had there. They've won the Rose Bowl under Mario Cristobal, and I'm telling you, in my eyes, this is the bigger win. Because this is the one that people didn't think they could get. People thought they could win the Rose Bowl. People did not think they could do this. And this was a heck of a coaching job by that staff, too. And let me tell you something else. Mario Cristobal is not a veteran head coach. He's been there a few years now. But just as much as that roster has something to prove, Mario Cristobal, he knows this. Mario Cristobal and his staff have something to prove. That's probably not their day-to-day motivation. They're more accountable to their players than they are, sports writers or fans. But there is that angle. If the fans and media didn't exist, the game wouldn't exist. So there is that angle. They proved a whole lot yesterday. Because this is one of the first times where you walk away watching Oregon against a premier staff and you say, Oregon worked them. That Oregon staff worked Ohio State yesterday. That is not to be ignored. That's a big deal moving forward. So what now? For Ohio State, what now? Well, the answer is the next game. It's one of the most overrated questions in sports. What now? You lost a game. You play the next game. That's what's next. It's not always the end of the world. Our buddy Jeremy Birmingham was talking about that today. It's not the end of the world, man. You just move on. You just play the next game. So that's a big win, though, for Oregon. Congratulations.
C.J. Stroud sacked on their final possession, and Oregon knocks off Ohio State 35-28. C.J. Stroud, 35 of 54, nearly 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. You look at that stat line, you're like, my goodness, he threw the ball 54 times. Yeah, he threw the ball 54 times. C.J. Verdell had himself a day. 3 total touchdowns. Oregon just ran the ball at Ohio State, and they did not stop. They kept running it down the throats of the Buckeyes, and they built a lead at halftime, and they never relinquished. 35-28, Ohio State loses for the first time at home since 2017. They had won 23 straight home games. Oregon had been 0-9 all time against Ohio State. They get their first win against Ohio State. Last meeting was in the national championship in 2014. First year of the college football playoff. Now, Ohio State's chances at the college football playoff, All right, back here with 2-time Super Bowl champ, former Florida State standout Bryant McFadden. BMAC, your reaction to what you just saw. By the way, you're under hit because nobody scored rest of way there.
Barely my under hit, but my reaction is I'm surprised. Home opener for Ohio State, jam-packed stadium. We saw a different team a week ago against Minnesota. First half was a bit sluggish on the offensive end. The entire ball game, they could not stop the ground and pound attack from the Gophers. Coming in today's matchup, we saw how Oregon struggled against Fresno at home. We saw a different mentality from the Ducks in today's ball game, and they had the game plan in play. They did not change that game plan. They wanted to run down the teeth of the Buckeyes defense, similar to what we saw last week from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They just stayed the course. And what they did defensively, they gave up a lot of plays. But what I said during pregame, just eliminate the splash plays. Make Ohio State earn it. And they were able to do that, and they came up with timely plays. It seems like the pass rush was never there. But then in the fourth quarter, they woke up. They started putting pressure on CJ, making him get out of the pocket, kind of rattled him a little bit, and they just made timely plays. And that was more than enough for this huge upset in week 2 of college football.
And they did this without their best player. Kayvon Thibodeau out of this game with an ankle injury, projected top 3 pick. He doesn't play. Ohio State goes to the air. You see C.J. Stroud with the monster numbers, BMAC.
Yes.
But he makes a mistake late, throwing the costly interception. What broke down on that play?
Well, he just panicked a little bit. He actually had Olave right in front of him. And granted, it was 3rd and 18, so they were going to go for it on 4th down. He just panicked. He was trying to avoid a defender, and he just put too much height on the football. You know, he just needed to lower the football. You see him here trying to make something happen right there. It's 3rd and 18. Olave is right there. It was a difficult pass. He did have a defender coming from the inside, and that was a huge interception for Oregon. And like I said, Oregon didn't play lights out defensively. If you look at some of the numbers, CJ threw for over 484 yards, 3 touchdowns. That interception you just saw there in your highlights. But then you look at the wide receivers. Smith had 11. Olave had 16 receptions. Wilson had 14 receptions. I mean, his wide receivers showed up and showed out, and they did enough for them to be competitive in this ball game. They just didn't receive the same help from their defense. And this has to be an area of concern for Ohio State going forward because the issues surfaced last week against Minnesota. Yep. But guess what? Their offense outplayed the Gophers' offense in the second half. In today's matchup, they played against a more talented offensive team, and Anthony Brown and his crew came up with plays when they needed to come up with plays, and their defense made that 1 or 2 timely play for their defense to be able to prevail in this huge upset.
You mentioned last week. Last week it was Mohamed Ibrahim. Mo gets injured, season-ending.
Luckily, he got injured.
Well, for Ohio State.
For Ohio State, not saying,
Yeah, I mean, he had a monster game, nearly 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. And then today, it's C.J. Verdell with 3 total touchdowns. This is a theme.
Yeah.
So this is a problem for the defensive front up front for Ohio State.
Listen, when I was in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin used to tell us all the time as a team, anytime you put bad tape out there for the football world to see, embrace it, but you better make it right. Because the same bad tape that you displayed the weeks before will surface. These opposing teams will try to do the same thing. Listen, the scouting report is out on Ohio State. Defensively, run at them. They average over 7 yards a pop per carry. That's almost a first down every time they ran the football. Technically, Oregon could have just ran the ball 3 downs and generated first downs, get eventually into the red area and score points, because Ohio State has been weak at the point of attack in the trenches. And that's something that I'm so surprised to see, because when you look at what Ohio State has been able to do, being able to produce so many pros on the defensive line, this is an unfamiliar place for their defense to be. But right now, they're living in this place.
What does it say about Mario Cristobal to get his kids ready, right? Like, I don't want that to be forgotten about. And look, I get it. These are Division I athletes. These are kids that are on scholarship. They're supposed to be ready for these moments. But you're asking all these kids to come over from the West Coast. It's 9 a.m. Pacific time when they kick off. We thought, okay, maybe it's going to be a sleepy start for Oregon. It's a sleepy start for the Buckeyes. This is their home opener.
No excuse.
And Oregon just comes right down and just dominates from the first half they were leading, and then end of the game they get a big interception. What does it say about Mario Cristobal to get his kids ready for a monster game like this?
No excuses. He had his guys dialed in. Number one, they weren't afraid of the moment. They weren't afraid of the team they were going against. Number two, no excuses. Like you said, it was a 9 a.m. kickoff on the West Coast. Their job was to deliver the baby. Nobody cares about your labor pains. You're supposed to deliver the baby and get it done by any means necessary. And that's what they did today. This was a statement game for Oregon. They played against a team they've never beaten before. They were 0-9 against the Buckeyes before today's matchup. Everything was in favor of Ohio State, right? A 14-point favorite in this ball game. Clearly, Vegas felt like Oregon traveling, from the West Coast, 9 a.m. kickoff. It's going to be a tough moment for them, especially when you look at the talent that Ohio State has on both sides of the football. Oregon came and played big-time bully ball today. I said during the pregame, you look at the job that Mario has done recruiting. He's done a real good job in the trenches, especially on the offensive end, and they were able to do this without their best player. So now when you look at the confidence for the rest of the game there in Oregon, when they get Kayvon back, you have to like their chances, not just being able to be a national contender to get into the playoffs, but most importantly, in the Pac-12. Yeah. Because before today's matchup, I felt like the Pac-12 was kind of wide open. Sure. Seeing what UCLA did last week against LSU at home, they're playing pretty inspired football. I love DTR at the quarterback position. But now seeing what Oregon did, I literally thought it was UCLA starting to really create separation from the rest of the pack in the Pac-12. But Oregon knocked back on the door. No, we right here.
Oregon has won the Pac-12 back-to-back years. You were getting plus money on them to win the Pac-12 for a third year in a row. They make a statement. And really entirely, big picture, the Pac-12 has made a statement. You mentioned the win for UCLA over LSU. This, and not to say the Pac-12 was never on the map, this puts them firmly back on the National College Football Playoff map.
No question. This was a huge game for their conference, because when you look at the makeup of the playoffs over the last few years, which conference was left on the outside looking in?
Pac-12.
The Pac-12. Deserving so, because they were so inconsistent. But now we saw a Pac-12 team last week on the national stage do what? Play physical football against an SEC powerhouse in LSU. Then today we see a Pac-12 team play physical football once again against a Big Ten powerhouse in Ohio State. Yes, they're serving college football notice. You know what? We're here, and we're tired of being left out of the conversation when it comes to playoff football, because right now, those two teams that I talked about, UCLA and Oregon, the job that they did last week and this week, clearly they're putting college football on notice. We can play football, but we can do it the old-fashioned way. Take you in the back alley and just swing. We're swinging.
This game certainly has national title implications in it for both schools. Ohio State now 1-1. They've got a while until they play Penn State. We know that Penn State, coming off a big emotional win against Wisconsin, that could be a big, big test for Ohio State if you're talking about the path to the college football playoff. If they win out, are they still in the college football playoff?
It depends on what happens in the Big Ten championship game and who they're facing off against. But we don't know if they'll get to that level. You know what I mean? When you look at their schedule, next week they have Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Penn State, Nebraska, Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan.
Yep.
So their schedule is not tough.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Based on what we know right now. A lot can happen between now and the end of the season, but right now their schedule is not as tough. That's why this game was so huge. Because you look at their schedule, they have Penn State who's ranked. No one else on their schedule is ranked.
No.
So my thing is this, if you take if Ohio State wins their conference in the Big Ten, not knowing exactly who they could face off against and giving you a hypothetical, would you take a one-loss Ohio State team over a one-loss SEC team?
Depends on what happens, right? Down the stretch, you got to evaluate different resumes.
Let's say Georgia loses to Alabama and they're undefeated when they play Alabama in the SEC
The answer
championship
would be no.
game.
You take Alabama. You take Georgia.
Georgia, in the winner.
Correct.
Of the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
That's why this game was so important.
Indeed.
And also, too, Ohio State needs Oregon to be undefeated. They can't have Oregon. Oregon can't have a slip up. You know what I mean? Because this loss would look better if Oregon is undefeated, finishing the top 4, top 5, top 3, or something like that. That could help the argument for Ohio State. But losing today's matchup at home, being a 14-point favorite, will not look good throughout the course of the season. They need to hope Penn State is undefeated by the time they play against Penn State. They need to hope, some other teams on their schedule play some pretty good football. Hopefully Michigan can do some good things to be ranked extremely high by the time they play. But to answer your question, the likelihood of Ohio State getting in the playoffs, seeing how they lost today, and not knowing exactly what will happen throughout the landscape of college football is not likely.
I respect what we saw today between Oregon and Ohio State. This was chippy early on, and it was noticeable. Now, C.J. Verdell runs it into the end zone for a touchdown here. I want to show everybody this play again, though, Harry, because you know this play well.
Yes, I ran this play in college. We call it East and West Georgia. The linebacker has his running back man-to-man. The single receiver job is to go block the linebacker that is supposed to be covering the running back. Next thing you know, touchdown C.J. Verdell.
It's well executed here, which is going to be a theme. Now we pick it up. Ohio State looking to answer back in the end zone, but there's a significant portion here too, as you see the DBs looking down.
Coach, leave them alone. Just make a call and let the guys play what they play. You can't have a touchdown being scored on you because guys are looking at their wristbands.
7-7, we pick it up here. Oregon, 5 left in the second. C.J. Verdell, it feels like we've seen this again.
This play looks very familiar. The same play, down, and around. Next thing you know, it's another 7, I'll say 6 points without the extra points for C.J. Verdell.
Now, this run was a little different because nobody was home as Verdell goes 70 yards. Swiggity swooty, he's going for that booty.
He's gone, and I got to give credit to Mario Cristobal and this offensive line. They were he goes untouched. He goes untouched. They opened up holes for these running backs all day long to run. They won the line of scrimmage. They were the tougher team. They were the most physical, and that's why they got the victory today.
But don't count Ohio State out. They want to get back in this game. Flash forward to the third. Look at this pretty little 26-yard touchdown. Ohio State cuts the lead to 21-14.
Seam ball, one of my favorite routes, right on the money.
It's beautifully thrown here. And then we flash forward. Oregon with a 7-point lead, 10-15 to go in the fourth. Anthony Brown says, hey, I can get in on the fun touchdown passes too. Really well-designed play.
Man, how good has Anthony Brown been for this team this year so far?
Now we've got C.J. Stroud trying to find a way to answer back. Get another touchdown for Ohio State. They cut the lead to 35-28. So you think there's a chance going into this because it's 35-28 late. Now they're trying to make something happen. Back-to-back drives where they found themselves in third and long, trying to figure it out with time running out. This time, he flicks the ball just a little bit too far. McKinley gets the big pick. That seals the game.
When you have an opportunity to make the play to win the game, you have to make it. McKinley did that. I've seen on numerous of occasions those guys drop that interception and the opponent goes down and score a touchdown to win the game or tie the game. Shout out to McKinley for right there making that game still in play.
Shout out to Oregon for handling the moment. They go into Columbus and they come away with a 35-28 win over the number 3 ranked Ohio State. So obviously, and look, C.J. Stroud, you see the numbers there, 35 of 54 for 484, 3 touchdowns and a pick. But to your point, Harry, Oregon made the plays on the defensive side of the ball when they needed to.
They did, and Ohio State had 3 guys go over 100 yards receiving, but that's not what I was looking at in the game today. I looked at how that secondary, when the opportunity presented itself, they made the plays in the secondary. Not just them, it was the defensive line, it was the linebackers flying around. They were the most physical team offensively, defensively, and on special teams.
Well, and when are we going to change our conversation a little with the Pac-12? Let's give them some credit. Like, this is not your grandpa's Pac-12.
Put some respect on the Pac-12.
I mean, seriously, like, all they've done is gone out and out-physicaled Ohio State in Columbus. Like,
Put some respect on the Pac-12.
What did UCLA do to LSU? Put some
respect on the Pac-12.
Look at that. It's a different brand of football. It's a physical brand of football. We've spent so much time this year talking about which conferences stink.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to actually step back and say, hey, Pac-12 looks better than we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is making noise, and they're actually going to get the respect that they deserve. It's been a long time, though. I can't say it's been a long time, but Oregon, man, that is a statement win. Mario Cristobal, a guy who played at the University of Miami, who has that little swag in him. So Mario Cristobal knows about winning, and he knows about swag. He knows about toughness. That's why his team went out today. And I'm pretty sure those guys had a chip on their shoulder because last year, Ohio State was supposed to go to Eugene and play the Ducks, and that didn't happen. So now they went inside of Ohio State and beat them in their home stadium. Those guys played with a chip on their shoulder without 5 key defensive players.
He just did all of that, by the way, while I tried to distract him with my swaggy dance. Nothing for the swag that I'm
locked in.
Oh, that's true. And you're right. Make a great point about the missing starters on the defensive side of the ball for Oregon. All right. Here, we got best enforcer. The Oregon strength coach, not about to let his team get a penalty late in the fourth. Look at this. He comes over.
Oh, you hater.
Look at that. Oh, he's jumping around. You always know the strength coach, too, because, he's filling out his medium. That shirt's just a little tight.
Oh.
Nothing jiggles when he bounces.
Oh, you hated on those guys, man. You let them live their moment.
Wow.
You let them live their moment. Usually I'm not a fan of players costing their team yardage and penalties, but that's a big game. That's a big game. You let those young cats live their moment, man.
So to recap, we faulted a player in the beginning for having a turnover chain, and now the coach is supposed to let the players live their moment?
Yeah, live your moment.
All right. Always fun to have some celebrations. Brought to you by Allstate. And the celebration moment, obviously, again with the graphics, man, we are world class around here.
They must know something we don't know. Where are we going for New Year's, man?
This is fancy.
Well, you know what? I'm always in church, so never mind.
Oh, my God. All right. The celebration moment is simple today. For all the celebrating that's happened, not just for the school, but for the conference, Oregon going into Columbus and beating Ohio State is absolutely the celebration moment. And you can look at this right here and just see the joy from one side, the pain from another, obviously. For an Oregon team that last year expected pre-COVID to get Ohio State out in Oregon, that didn't happen because of COVID. Now they get their chance to go into Columbus and make this happen. And it's a big win for the program. It's a big win for the Pac-12. And we talked about it earlier tonight. The Pac-12 at some point needs to be, the conversation needs to change.
Well, this is a huge win for Oregon. And I thought those guys had a chip on their shoulder, man. They didn't get to play this game last year in Eugene, Oregon. They went into Ohio State, handled business. Now, those guys, they're not going to harp on this win too much. They're ready for the next opponent. They have a goal at hand. They have a task at hand. And Oregon did this without the best player in college football and other defensive studs that did not play today.
Yeah, they were missing 5 guys on the defensive side of the ball, and Kayvon Thibodeau obviously not there. And that's a huge. I remember listening to the broadcast, and in the fourth quarter they were saying, "Man, this is that moment where they really wish they had Thibodeau." And about 2 plays later, Oregon got a sack, and sacks were hard to come by in this game. Pressure was hard to come by, and the stat line is going to be really good.
I'm disappointed in Ohio State's defensive line. Because remember, I said last week, for Ohio State defensively, for those guys to even have an opportunity or a chance to be a good unit, they had to pick up the slack of what's lacking in the linebacker and secondary, right? They had to be great week in and week out. They got pushed around today. They got bullied by the Oregon offensive line.
For the second straight week. Remember,
second week in a row.
Minnesota did it to them, and we excused it, saying, it's Minnesota. They have tough concepts to run against. Nope. Oregon just went in and out-physicaled them. That is our celebration moment.
Buckeye Talk coming to you from Ohio State's 35-28 loss to Oregon here in the 2021 home opener, snapping Ohio State's, I think it was 25-game regular season winning streak, had never lost a game in the regular season under Ryan Day, including his time as the interim coach in 2018. Doug, why did Ohio State lose this game?
Because of the thing that we've sort of been talking about all along, that they don't have a defense that can shut people down, and they don't have a quarterback that can save them. So you need both of those things. It's funny, the corners actually played pretty good, which is, we talk about the secondary a lot. But it's the sort of fundamental parts of the defense. It does look a lot like 2018, when it's these big plays and bad angles and guys out of position and losing contain on the edge. And it's like, I don't even know
like whose fault that was. It's not like a corner blows coverage. It's like, but there's sure a bunch of Oregon guys running free at inopportune times. So it's sort of the basics of the defense. And it is partially scheme, which is on Kerry Combs, but it's also partly on Ryan Day as a head coach. And it is partially when they have those moments, they don't have a Chase Young or Ryan Shazier or a Marshawn Lattimore to save them. And they needed to be saved today. And this is a team that was fundamentally flawed defensively and doesn't have enough saviors otherwise, and the result's a loss.
Steven, why did Ohio State lose this game?
I understand the defense is bad, but they were down 21-7 at one point. And if someone would have told you in July that Oregon was going to have 21 points against Ohio State, you probably would have believed it, given the questions we had about defense. If someone would have told you that Ohio State would have had 7 points going into this third quarter, you would have looked at them like they were crazy. I don't think this offense is aggressive enough in the first half. And I understand you have a young quarterback, but you have the two best receivers in college football. And as Jackson Smith-Njigba showed today and how he flashed as a freshman, that's a 5-star freaking receiver who didn't start getting involved until the third quarter. One of the things in 2018 was the defense was bad, but the offense was so good that it made up for it until it didn't. The offense never gave itself a chance to make up for the fact that this defense was going to be bad. If Ohio State's offense if it's a 21-14 game at halftime, it doesn't matter how bad the defense is playing because the offense is rolling. The offense didn't get rolling until too late, and by the time it got rolling, the defense stopped getting stops. They only gave up 14 points in the first half, which is pretty impressive given our expectations of them. So maybe that's part of it. They got to be a little bit more aggressive and give this defense a little bit of leeway, and they're not doing that right now.
Last week, Ohio State, in the opener against Minnesota, 5 touchdowns at 50 or more yards. Today, they only had one play, I think, longer than 29 yards. Oregon did a better job forcing Ohio State to drive the length of the field. If Ohio State's big plays aren't there, that's where you saw some susceptibility, some vulnerability today. They got past midfield. I think the stats were, once they got past midfield in the first half of this game, they carried the ball 8 times for 14 yards, and Stroud was 4 of 8 passing for 66 yards. And that included something you were kind of talking about earlier, some garbage stats. A dump off to Travion Henderson and went for 17 yards. So it was a lack of execution beyond the 50-yard line in the first half was what I thought really sunk Ohio State. I will say also, though, from the defensive side of things, this was a defense that the last couple of years had Pete Werner that it never left the field, the guy that was like the anchor of the middle of that defense at linebacker. Before that, you had Malik Harrison, who was like the anchor of the middle of that defense. Ohio State either does not believe it has that player right now or is so invested in this like personnel package thing that they're doing right now that they're going in that direction in spite of having that player. I don't know which of those two things it is, but I think it needs that presence. And I don't know if it has to come at linebacker, but I think they're missing it there among other places.
Just let me add, they had 3 drives that stopped because they got stopped on 4th down. Right. And they converted the one at the end, but if they had been a little bit on 4th down, I thought the decisions by Ryan Day to pass up long field goals or to not punt, they were the right decisions. But you've got to make more of those. If they had made 1 or 2 of those, they might have won.
And there was another one that he passed up to kick a long field goal and instead pooched it down there. They pin Oregon at the 1-yard line, and Oregon rips off a 99-yard drive. And the one time they did convert a 4th down and got a touchdown out of it, Oregon then turned right around and went like 74 yards in 6 plays. So as you were kind of saying, or we were talking earlier, Stephen, like the offense and defense just never synced it up at the right time. It was like, it's almost like a basketball thing where like you need to get stops on defense so you can really run your offense, and that wasn't happening. They just were not in sync with that today.
I think people are okay if we go long on this. There's a vibe still on Twitter during the game. Like Oregon was letting it go there at the end. And a lot of people were like, hey, Ohio State's going to pull this out. And in the past, Justin Fields pulls out a game like that. Chase Young pulls out a game like that. Ohio State, I think, has 2 guys right now who can pull out a game like that. But those 2 guys need someone else to get them the ball. Chase Young can do it by himself. Justin Fields, as a quarterback, can do it by himself. Their best players are receivers. And that's tough. Because it's not even that the running back's the best player. It's not like their best players are in the wrong spots. And I think Chris Olave was ready to pull this game out for them, and then C.J. Stroud flipped it over his head and threw an interception right when he couldn't. And that is, they are a step short with game-saving players at the positions where you are most able to save a game.
All 3 wide receivers had 100 yards receiving today. I don't know how often that's happened in Ohio State. I don't know how often you just see that in football in general. But to your point, it doesn't matter because wide receivers are great, but they rely on someone else to help them be great. The quarterback always has the ball. The defensive end, they can just go get the quarterback. Even a cornerback, you can shut down the side of the field, or you can just hand it off to a running back like we saw in 2019 with J.K. Dobbins. When players have to rely on something else to get them the ball, it doesn't matter how dominant they are, because you have to consistently find ways to get them the ball, and teams can take that away from you.
But more to the point, those yards came in empty possessions too often today. They came in possessions that did not lead to points, and that's why it's 35-28 in Oregon's favor.
Keep going. I think people are upset, and they want an explanation for this. We kind of joked last week at Minnesota. It's like, oh, they only ran 48 plays because they held these big plays. Because when they got the ball to those guys, they cashed it in. Those throws to Olave and Wilson against Minnesota were not empty because they led directly to touchdowns. There were times here, like you said, that's a great catch, that's a great thing, but then you got to do more. And it really shows, like, if they're not getting 70-yard touchdowns, they might be in a little bit of trouble, which is they have that ability, but they're at a point right now where they're relying on that so much. It is hard to live in a world where you have to get 70-yard touchdowns to win.
And at the same time, you probably, if you're Ohio State, I don't care who you're playing, feel like you should never allow a 99-yard touchdown drive. And if they just don't allow one 99-yard touchdown drive in this game, we might still be playing out here instead of us talking about this. So get the text 614-350-3315 for analysis like this all week. And make sure you listen to the podcast, Buckeye Talk. If you're not already a listener or subscriber, find us on iTunes. Find us wherever you find all other podcasts. We're there 5 days a week.
Snap the ball back to throw. Stroud, pressure, goes down, and that's going to do it. They are not going to be able to get up and run a play. Game over. Oregon has defeated Ohio State 35-28. Goosebumps.
Woo! That's what you like to see. That's what you like to hear. We start out Duck Insider today with an awesome call from Jerry Allen. The Ducks taking down Ohio State. I'm Joey Mack. Thanks for being here with us. We are going to relive one of the best wins for Oregon football on the road ever. In fact, we'll have a little bit of the debate of just where this one ranks. Now, in the context of the entire season, it's the second win of the year for the Ducks. It's also just another game. And as Mario Cristobal said post-game, it's a 1-0 mentality. Now the Ducks have to, this week, go 1-0 against Stony Brook. We have some details on that coming up. A lot of questions about some injuries and the health of Oregon after this 35-28 win over Ohio State. We will get to all of that. I already see one coming in from Mike. I see a few others. I will do my best to keep up with your Facebook comments and questions, your YouTube comments and questions, Twitter comments and questions if you're live with us in the 1 o'clock hour. We just heard from head coach Mario Cristobal. He wrapped up his weekly Monday press conference with the media, and we do have some updates for you. Kayvon Thibodeau, we'll see if he's able to go. Justin Flo out indefinitely. A lot of other questions about some other guys about this team. I think a lot of them we're kind of waiting and seeing as the week progresses. That's the latest from Mario Cristobal. One other, though, piece of just terrible news, man. Cam McCormick, he will be done for the year after that injury he sustained on that huge third down conversion. And, man, just my heart goes out to Cam McCormick. This is the worst part of sports, and Cam has battled through so much. I just feel awful that he will miss the rest of this season. Just feel so bad for Cam McCormick. That's on Oregon, Ohio State. Okay, so I have been doing a ton of different radio interviews, as you can imagine, with a bunch of different people across the country over the last few days. It's been a lot of fun, and one of the things that keeps coming up is everyone's asking me about the environment. Like, man, what was that environment like? Had to be so cool. I will tell you, I think that was the second loudest environment I've ever been in. When Ohio State really drummed it up on third down for the Ducks, couple different times. There have only been maybe a couple times where I have not been able to hear Jerry and Jorgie in my headset on the sideline. That almost happened this weekend. It's happened twice at Autzen Stadium previously. So I think the only environment that's louder than what the Ducks experienced this past Saturday was probably Autzen Stadium. Famously, I could not hear when Jerry Allen made the Ifo Ekpe-Olumu call of Ifo against Michigan State. I could not hear Jerry making that call because the crowd was so loud at the time. So that's just one example. Ducks, though, were a little bit shorthanded. No Kayvon Thibodeau. No Justin Flo. No Drew Mathis, and Dustin says Nebraska was loud. I will agree with that. I think Nebraska was probably the third loudest I've ever been in. I think Ohio State was a little bit bigger of an environment. So a little bit shorthanded. No Kayvon Thibodeau for this game. Ducks hope to have him back soon. No Justin Flo. That is indefinite according to Mario Cristobal today, and no Drew Mathis as he got banged up as well. But a great start for the Ducks defense. They forced a turnover on downs, and you're thinking, okay, here we go, defense. Huge play from Bennett Williams in the backfield. Bennett Williams, one of the team leaders in tackles. I thought that Bennett Williams had maybe the best game we've seen him have in an Oregon uniform with 8 total tackles. Mikael Wright was the only Duck who had more tackles, and you don't love seeing a cornerback lead your team in tackles. You don't love seeing one of your nickel guys like Bennett Williams leading your team in tackles, but that is also a testament to how good Ohio State's wide receivers were. Seeing Garrett Wilson and Mikael Wright duke it out, wide receiver versus cornerback, those are 2 guys that are going to be playing on Sundays. That was cool. That was a cool treat for everybody. Chris Olave as well. That receiver core for Ohio State is no joke. Well, not much for the Ducks on the first drive, but then they stopped Ohio State again. And the Buckeye punter just does his thing and puts it inside the 1. We saw 2 really, really good displays of punting the football early on from Tom Snee. And the Buckeye punter, who, I'll be honest, didn't write down his name in my notes, and I feel bad about that. But here we are on a Monday morning as I'm reading my notes that I made on the sideline. So no score after 1, and then this is that 99-play drive where I think everybody watching and listening kind of started to go, Oregon can move the ball against this Buckeye defense. Defense is playing pretty darn well for the Ducks. And C.J. Verdell scored on that Anthony Brown option. The balance on offense is what set it up. 99-yard drive. 99-yard drive for the Ducks. And I think everybody looking on was going, man, this is okay. This is going to be fun. Especially when the Ducks got another defensive stop. And then it was yet again another great punt to the 1 freaking yard line. And the Ducks would have to go 99 yards yet again. Well, they weren't able to do it. But this is where that moment happened, where I got to tell you, I was standing at the 15-yard line. And Ducks had to convert on a long third down, and they do it to Cam McCormick. And he went down, and I just, he tried to get up, then he went back down, and the first guy out there was Mario Cristobal. Just heartbreaking. And Cam McCormick, if you're just joining us, he will be done for the year. But it was just absolutely heartbreaking to see Cam go down like that. I saw his mom tweet something that I cannot say on the air, but it just pretty much summed up what he has gone through. And so, man, just thinking about that guy and seeing him post-game, not to jump ahead here, but just seeing him post-game. He was on crutches. Team runs over to celebrate with all the fans that made the trip to Columbus. And so many of his teammates made sure to come back over to him on the field and say, hey, this is for you too, man. Just my heart breaks for Cam. But if something like that's going to happen, Ducks ended up winning the game for him, I think. Ohio State did score on their next possession with some tempo. And look, admittedly, Oregon wasn't ready for it. Ducks were not ready for that tempo. Coach Cristobal did talk about that. We're going to hear from Mario Cristobal with his weekly press conference coming up in just a moment. But the Ducks got it to 14 when they went on a 4th and 1. Pitch to Verdell. He scored. It makes it 14-7. Huge play with 4:51 left before the half. And I'm thinking, okay, if you can get the ball back before the end of the half and you can go down and score, boy, that could be huge. And the Ducks had a chance. Anthony Brown converted on a 3rd down, truly giving up his body. That was another play where I went, okay, Ducks are in this, utilizing his legs. And if it wasn't for a holding call that, shall we say, I thought was a bit questionable. If it wasn't for that holding call on the big gain to Micah Pittman, I think Oregon would have maybe scored a touchdown, definitely would have had the opportunity to kick a field goal. But that was a big moment. I felt like if Oregon scored there, it might have been over. That's how confident I think Oregon was playing at the time. Miles says, yeah, holding call just before half was terrible. Yeah, so I'll be honest, I was at the other end of the field from where that took place because I was on the field while Jerry and Jorgie were calling it. And I thought, hell, I didn't see it. And then I did get a chance to see the replay, and I thought, oh, yeah. Either way, though, Ducks got the ball to start the second half. And holy cow, C.J. Verdell, 77-yard run. In fact, we're going to play the full game recap so that you can relive it a little bit. But, hey, how about the call of the game? Huh, Scott? You got that queued up? Can we hear the call of the game? Is that something that we can do? Because this was our Toyota call of the game. Was C.J. Verdell. If he doesn't have it, then you're just going to have to wait until the game recap to hear it. Scott, you tell me. Oh, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. Okay, so C.J. Verdell, though, this is my point on C.J. And I said this heading into the game, right? How many times have we seen the Ducks turn to C.J. Verdell and turn to the run game in a big game when they need a huge play? Well, God, did they do that in this game, and God, did he execute here to start the second half.
And Brown wants the snap, has got it. Give it to Verdell. Busted up the middle. Here we go. Has he got the speed? 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. Touchdown! C.J. Verdell. Yes, he's got the speed.
Oh, good stuff from Jerry Allen. He does have the speed. 77 yards, though, for C.J. Verdell. That made it 21-7. And again, if the Ducks been able to even just kick a field goal, it would have been 24-7 if it wasn't for that holding call. Man, at that point, it's like, all right, okay, Ducks are controlling the game. But then the passing game started to get going for Ohio State, as we all saw. I think that Tim DeRuyter would tell you that the Ducks probably gave up too many passing yards. But, man, did they have to battle. Guys were going down. They had to rotate guys in. And they held it. But Ohio State did answer to make it 21-14. Oregon marched right back down the field. And this time it was Travis Dye who scored around the edge. Ohio State 3 times gave up that play to the edge. They could not contain the edge. They could not hold the edge. Ducks took advantage. It's 28-14. Buckeyes went on a 4th and 2 at the 8 next drive. Incomplete in the end zone. Next thing you know, it's the Ducks' ball. And it's like, okay, you could put them away here. Unfortunately, they couldn't, and we all had to grow some gray hairs and start pulling hair a little bit as I was sweating on the sideline, figuratively and literally. Oregon didn't score, though, and that was when the crowd really started to get into it because the Buckeyes got it back. Again, with the passing game, they marched down and scored with 12:54 to go. Ducks drove down. The play action to Maliki Matavao to score his first touchdown as a Duck was really what sealed it. I think that if Oregon doesn't score there, we might be having a different conversation today. And the play action game was so effective for Oregon throughout the course of this game. Buckeyes did drive and score again, 35-28. They protected the quarterback really well. And they went on a 4th and 5 at the 14. They were 2 of 5 converting on 4th downs, Ohio State was. Ducks, though, did have to punt. Buckeye crowd really, really got into it, forced a false start, couldn't move the ball. And then you know what? It seemed fitting that the defense would have to make a stop. And they did, even though Noah Sewell got dinged up on that play. And I think we were all at that point just going like, what else is going to happen? I mean, it was just one of those games where guys are getting beat up. It's a physical football game. Losing linebackers left and right. But fortunately for the Ducks, Noah Sewell was able to come back. It was the Buckeyes' ball with less than 5 seconds left after Oregon elected, and I thought a lot of people would be wondering about this, Oregon elected to punt. They put the ball back in their special teams and defense's hands. They elected to punt as the waning seconds were winding down. Ducks had to hold the lead and did. Verone McKinley picked it at the sideline. That was game winner. And Verone McKinley even said post-game, he's like, man, I've dreamed about having moments like that. And it was a huge, huge moment. Oregon drove. That was when that punt came on that short 4th. They held it with a sack. And, of course, the two-way stud in DJ Johnson comes in to make the sack. So, okay, back up for me here. DJ comes in as a highly recruited defensive end. Ducks with a lot of depth there, and they think, DJ, we think that your athleticism could really help out as a tight end. He makes the change. Well, then this week, or last week, I should say, he does both. Gets a tight end, couple plays at tight end that were really effective, and then he's going to get remembered for being in there to get that sack. Flashbacks to Charles Nelson, the two-way star for the Ducks at the time who was scoring touchdowns and playing safety. just DJ Johnson, that's incredible. Incredible. A couple other shout-outs. I thought Braden Swinson played exceptionally well. Verone McKinley was all over the field. How about Dawson Jaramillo holding it down at left tackle a few times for the Ducks as well on some scoring plays? Dawson was in there, and man, did these guys battle. We've got some awards coming out from the Pac-12 Conference. Let's relive it, though. Jerry and Jorgie on the call. Our game recap of Oregon taking down Ohio State to move to 2-0.
Snap and give it to Verdell going left. There's nobody out there. He's going to score, and he does. Touchdown, Oregon. Verdell had Ryan walk, and Ryan Walk had nobody to block. Verdell on 4th and a yard beside Anthony Brown. Snap, pitch it to Verdell going left. He may score again, and he will. Touchdown, Oregon. That's the same play they ran for the score from Verdell the first time. And Brown wants the snap, has got it. Give it to Verdell. Busted up the middle. Here we go. Has he got the speed? 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. Touchdown, C.J. Verdell. Yes, he's got the speed. And here's the give to Dye, who strolls like it's a Sunday afternoon into the end zone. DJ Johnson in motion across the formation. Give it to Verdell. No, it's going to be a throw. Wide open. Touchdown, Oregon. In the end zone. Nobody near Maliki Matavao. And he scores his first touchdown for Oregon as a freshman. Snap, back to throw. With time. Pressure comes. Trying to run away from it. Now we'll just dump a short pass. It's intercepted. It is intercepted. Verone McKinley with a pick at the 37-yard line and then out of bounds. Snap the ball, back to throw. Stroud, pressure, goes down. And that's going to do it. They are not going to be able to get up and run a play. Game over. Oregon has defeated Ohio State 35-28. Goosebumps.
Game recap, Oregon over Ohio State. A fired-up Mario Cristobal did go to celebrate with the fans. Those of you who made the trip to Columbus, thanks for doing it. I heard a few Go Ducks chants throughout the game. It was an awesome experience. I'm glad that Oregon was able to get that win. Back in the Country Financial Studio, it's Duck Insider, presented by Point Community Credit Union. If you're just joining us, the Ducks hoping to have Kayvon Thibodeau back. Justin Flew will be out indefinitely, as Coach Cristobal called it, a pretty significant injury. And Mace Funa, we're going to see what happens. Keith Brown, Coach said, had a cramp, hoping that everything else is okay. But the guys got dinged up. There's no doubt about it. The injury report, I think, later on in the week, you're going to hear more from Coach Cristobal on that front. And then Cam McCormick, your heart just breaks for a guy who's been through so much. Really hope that he's able to work his way back, and I would love to see him back on the field for the Ducks, as he will be out for the season. Coach Cristobal announced that. It's just, God, your heart just breaks for a guy like that. Continuing with some of the notes from the 35-28 win over Ohio State, now we get ready for a 4:30 kickoff on Saturday against Stony Brook. Anthony Brown, 17 for 35, 236 yards, a couple of touchdowns, no interceptions. C.J. Verdell, 20 carries, 161 yards, and 2 scores. Anthony Brown also ran 10 times for 65 yards. Travis Dye, 8 carries for 43. And then in the receiving game, how about this? The most receiving yards for an individual, C.J. Verdell. It was actually on one of those, really it was a run for a touchdown. It was a pitch from Anthony Brown. That was one of the longest plays for the Ducks in terms of a passing play, because it was a 20-yarder. Spencer Webb had a 30-yarder. Chris Hudson had his 130-yarder, but the Ducks were really balanced offensively. They didn't have any huge passing plays downfield, but distributed the ball really, really well. Impressive. 505 total yards for the Ducks, 612 total yards for Ohio State. 612 total yards for Ohio State, and they scored 28 points. Football's a weird game sometimes, man. Weird game. Elsewhere for the Ducks, Tom Snee, I thought, was a big asset. 301 total yards on Saturday for Anthony Brown. He now leads the Pac-12 in total offense with 264.5 yards per game. His 59 attempts are also the most by a conference quarterback who has yet to throw an interception. So you talk about taking care of the football, managing the game, and making plays. That's what Anthony Brown has been doing for the Ducks. C.J. Verdell also now leads the conference in rushing per game and has the most carries, and it's actually not close. I think this is a springboard type of game for the Ducks. Beat Ohio State for the first time in program history, knocked off a top 3 team for the 6th time in school history, and the first time since 2011. Remember when the Ducks were at Stanford back in 2011, November 12th of 2011, and the first road win over a top 5 team since the Ducks beat Stanford in that same 2011 season. Beat a top 5 team for the 9th time in program history and snapped Ohio State's 23-game home winning streak, which, by the way, was one of the winning streaks that was up there with the Ducks' own home winning streak, which is pretty impressive. 13-0 for the Ducks when rushing for at least 200 yards under head coach Mario Cristobal, and they're now 16-2 under Cristobal when winning the turnover battle. Huge indication of if you're going to win the game. You win that turnover battle. And 3 more true freshmen saw playing time for the Ducks, bringing the total to 27 that have gotten in through 2 games, including 12 true freshmen. And that crowd of 100,482 people is the 4th largest that Oregon has played in front of in program history. How about that? And the Ducks did well. Did really well. It was also the first loss for Ohio State head coach Ryan Day in the regular season. And the Ducks did that. Ran for 269 yards and 3 touchdowns on 38 attempts. That's 7.1 yards per carry against Ohio State. Pretty darn good, huh? And the Ducks also came up with 3 huge 4th down stops, holding the Buckeyes to 2 for 5. Also held Ohio State to 6 for 15 on 3rd down, the defense did. And 2 players got their first career starts in Keith Brown and Braden Swinson, of course, filling in for some of those injured Ducks. And that's now 4 players on defense who have made their starting debuts this season. Braden Swinson is also now leading the conference, actually, in sacks. He's just making plays when he needs to. So the Ducks now will, of course, turn their attention to Stony Brook, and they're going to do it with a top 4 ranking in both the Associated Press and USA Today AFCA coaches polls. Those were announced yesterday morning. Ducks were among the biggest risers in the AP poll. They jumped up 8 spots from number 12 and 7 spots in the coaches poll. So the Ducks will be number 4 in the country. Now, and if you're the Ducks, take care of business. Go 1-0 every week. I think you're going to like what the results are at the end of the season. A lot of awards rolling in, as you can imagine, for the Ducks after this truly historic win. C.J. Verdell has been named the Offensive Player of the Week from the Pac-12 Conference. Alex Forsyth, the Offensive Lineman of the Week, and that's after Ryan Walk was actually named a Player of the Game by the Duck team themselves. You'll hear about that from Mario Cristobal coming up in just a moment. But Alex Forsyth recognized by the Pac-12 Conference. Impressive stuff for the Westland native. And Braden Swinson, the defensive end for the Ducks. Critical sack in that 35-28 win. He has been named the Defensive Lineman of the Week by the Pac-12 Conference. Pretty darn cool as the Ducks, the awards start to roll in. Welcome back to Duck Insider, presented by On Point Community Credit Union. Joey Mack in the Country Financial Studio. I think I caught up on everything you guys were saying in the comments. Thanks for the interaction. I think we've answered all those questions. I did see one. Trevin Maai was a guy that I did not mention as part of the run-through of the injuries. Coach Cristobal talking about that. The Ducks, look, with where they are right now, everybody's going to be a little bit dinged up. Later on in the week, though, you'll have a better idea of the availability of the majority of the players heading into this matchup with Stony Brook. And I will say, and Coach is going to allude to this a little bit when asked about Justin Flo. Look, I know there were a lot of rumors swirling. We were getting asked on the show pretty much every day at some point yesterday, or last week, I should say, with Justin Flo. Fans, I would just say, like, coaches will answer questions about injuries. But I also just, to break the fourth wall here and let you inside broadcaster when, I work for the team. I don't want to say if anybody's hurt because then the other team's going to know if someone's hurt. I mean, just like, so I'm saying it that way. The way Coach is about to say it, as you will hear, is it's not really advantageous for us to say some of these things heading into a game. So I totally get it. Everybody wants to know what's going on. But sometimes we're probably just not going to say. And also, I will say injuries are the worst part of sports. Cam McCormick in particular, my heart just goes out to him and everything that he's had to deal with. And now there's a number of Ducks that are going to have to fight through a little bit of that adversity. Well, good stuff.